Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome. You're welcome to this broadcast today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. This is your special broadcast for today. Today we're gonna be talking about why the pushback is so much for France in Africa when we see France's post-colonial era still impact their relationship with African countries, and we'll delve on that and talk also about those 11 pacts that most of these African countries sign. But how is France seeing its relationship with the 14 African countries that these are post-colonial or former French colonies? We're going to dive into that and see what is the impact of France's relationship with these 14 African countries. We all know Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso have opted out of this pact, and most African countries which are French are still feeling the impact because of the huge burden they have in their plate. So just stay put, and we're going to be coming back after this. Thank you for watching. Thank you. Today we have this show special for talking about Africa. Okay, we want to talk this because it has caused a lot of problem within the African community and Africa continent as a whole. How their relationship can be with France. Okay, we know the colonial past. There are people who are still saying that the relationship is good, is cordial, but if you look at the history, you see the political coup d'etats that have happened in African countries. You understand the relationship that France has with most of these African countries. Okay, the French colonial pact is an agreement between France and some of its former French colonies. There were 14 of them. Now we know that 3 of them have left. Okay, the pact, but there were 11 of those pacts, and it's very difficult to come out from those 11 pacts because you have to know France. All those pacts are part of their relationship that they have. Okay, and former African Union permanent rep, to the United States, Dr. Arikana, always made us understand the detail about this pact. Okay. And he said that she said that this imperial pact allows France to continue to interfere, okay, and also influence African colonies in every aspect of their affairs, financially, economically, and militarily. And so she's very clear with that because she understands the diplomatic relationship between African countries and France, and she always hammer on that about how France still exploit the natural resources of these African countries. Okay, and France, we all know the government of France continued to uphold this pact. Okay, since this pact was established in 1944. So this is what most of these African countries are going through, which are French colonies, where France is pushing most of these Francophonie countries, these Francophone nations in Africa, into poverty as France benefit and build its nation, right? Today, we are witnessing some of these countries fighting against France. We know of Benin, Burkina Faso, Guinea, Mali, Niger, okay, where before we know that coup d'etat, when it happened in Africa, it was France that was organizing them, right? We understand the political gimmick behind those coups d'etats, numerous coups d'etats that were happening in the past, right? But today, the coup d'etat that happened were not in France's favor, right? You saw the various coups d'etat that were happening. So that angered France. But we are looking at it because those pacts are most of the things that have tied most of these African countries to stay within the autonomy of France. Okay, and you understand, French system is not is assimilation. You know, they colonize you, they assimilate you, they make you speak their language, they make you talk like them, they make you, everything should be French. So that is how France operates in most of these African countries. So we know of those stories that happened in the past, but when you look at it critically, those 14 African countries, it's very hard, very difficult for them to come out from this 11 pact. Okay, those 11 pacts are so hard for them to come out. Guinea, these three countries came out. They claim that they have sent France out, but they are still using the CFA, and the CFA is the biggest currency thing that most African countries are using under French colonial rule. Okay, so if this Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali say that they have sent France out, it's only some of some of those 11 pacts. They have not cleaned up all those pacts. There are 11 of them in number. Okay, so it is very difficult, you know. So those colonial taxes that this country paid, even though they claim to be independent, they are not independent, right? Okay, so most of these countries had independence, but on paper. It was just on paper. It was not like really something, because France still held them spellbound on what they call Coopération Accord, you know, that French accord with them. Okay, and France considered most of its colony even after their independence like France outre-mer. It means that France abroad, okay, France in the diaspora. It means that they will still control you from France. These leaders are being appointed, they are not elected. France appoint them and they impose them on you. So most of the guys who wanted to go against French policy were mostly made to leave the planet Earth. Okay, there are so many of them. You know of Jacobo Abanze, Salvador Allende, Omar Torija, Magufuli. All these are people that Muammar Gaddafi, Lumumba, Patrice Lumumba. These are people that we understand how their mysterious death occurred, right? It was just because most of these guys were Pan-Africanists. Pan-Africanism is something that has been killed by this system of France trying to make sure that their autonomy is maintained in any way, shape, or form. Okay, please, if you are just joining, just make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you are watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. If you are watching on Twitter, make sure I have Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Okay, make sure you hit the follow button on Facebook. Then you hit the subscribe button on YouTube, so that I'll be coming up and you can watch my videos. Okay, now what is happening in African countries? Most of African countries are suffering from this pact. Okay, I want you to watch this short excerpt, then we'll come back and we'll do some analysis of that. Okay, watch this excerpt, and when we come back, stay tuned and take a listen to this, then we'll come back to that. Okay.
Huge. I have seen so many people saying that Africa could be the world's
France still has its colonial empire in Africa. In the 1960s, when colonies were increasingly seen as barbaric, France had to grant independence to most of its colonies. But there was a catch. Each country that transitioned to independence had to sign a cooperation agreement with France that outlined the future relationship between the two countries. In return for financial aid, the agreement allowed France the rights to the country's natural resources, as well as the stationing of troops in their country. However, France also controlled the currency of its former colonies by forcing them to tie their currency, the CFA franc, to the French French currency, the franc, or later the euro. Since the implementation of the cooperation agreement, France has sought to bind its former colonies to itself by appointing leaders loyal to them and punishing countries that try to resist French rule, like Guinea. All of this is particularly damaging to the citizens of the former colonies, as the financial aid that France gives to those countries almost never ends up in the hands of the citizens.
Does it make sense that France says that it gave African countries independence, but they made them sign a treaty called the Pact for Continuation of Colonization? And let me say this, guys, I just pray that I'm making this up. It's called the Pact for Continuation of Colonization.
The Pact for the Continuation of Colonization said, 1. You shall deposit 85% of your bank reserves with the French Central Bank under the control of the French Minister of Finance. The French government will take all your monies, collectively invest your monies in the French stock market under the French name, and you don't have to know what the returns are. Should you wish to access some of your money, keep in mind that countries are now left with only 15% of their reserves. You have to submit your country's financial report, and if approved, you get to access up to 20% of your deposits from the previous year as a loan at commercial interest rates. So you go from having a humongous credit with France to now owing France for borrowing your own money, a loan that you'll never be able to finish paying. They also said all your minerals discovered and yet to be discovered, French companies have the first right of refusal. They also said your military can only be trained by France. You can only purchase military equipment from France. France shall have military presence in your country and can invade your country without notice if France feels that her interests in your country are being violated.
As a French African, I need to tell you what's going on with West Africa and France right now. For the past hundreds of years, France has put their boots down in West Africa and never got up and left. For the past few centuries, they've been exploiting African labor by using the resources they mine to power the buildings in France. Their coal, their uranium, their steel was all stolen from them, and they received less than a fraction of the profits that they created. Many African countries are still using the French franc as their form of currency, and every single time an African leader had made a speech about making their country an independent nation, they either got assassinated or mysteriously went missing. Take the case of Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba, who made a speech in 1960 declaring the end of Belgian rule. He was assassinated shortly after. So back to present day. West Africans are sick and tired of France. Some protesters even holding signs that France is a terrorist state. Mali and Burkina Faso were the first African countries to completely cut ties with France early August, late July. They turned off France radio stations to stop propaganda from spreading to their citizens and denied Air France the right to land their planes in their country. The most recent country to join this revolution was Niger, with military performing a coup d'etat to remove the France-endorsed president with one that actively opposes the France regime. This is huge. I have seen so many people saying that Africa could be the world's most powerful continent if they weren't being exploited all the damn time. And it seems like they're starting to fight back. Of course, France has threatened to intervene with war, but Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have planned ahead, stating that if France goes to war with Niger, they will be going to war with all three countries. We're in the middle of something big.
France withdraw its troops from their country. They say the former colonial power has failed to protect them from armed groups.
If France was our partner, it was supposed to help us fight against terrorism, but since 2016 there has been no change. We think France doesn't deserve Burkina Faso's trust.
Now its military rulers have reportedly suspended the 2018 security accord with Paris.
Is it true most of France's financial wealth right now is still built on
$500 billion a year
Wow.
from Africa?
from Africa?
Wow.
500. That's a lot
And
of
is
money.
it true that the deals are such that an African nation that has this deal with France cannot do business around the world with their natural resources without the first right of refusal with
First
France?
right of refusal is in
And they can
France's
still
hand.
tell them no.
They can still tell them no.
So if they've dug gold, coffee, cocoa,
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
they go to France like, hey, you guys want this? And they say, nah. And they say, okay, we're going to sell it over here. France can still say, nah, you can't do that.
Yep.
So insane.
And all those nations still run on the French franc, which is also hilarious because even France has
Goes
the
on the
euro.
euro.
Exactly.
So wait, they buy money from France with their own natural
So,
resources.
yeah, and if they don't
that's not
comply-
even worth anything in France.
Yep, and if they don't comply, the faucet's turned off immediately.
Questo si chiama franco CFA. È la moneta coloniale che la Francia stampa per 14 nazioni africane alle quali applica il signoraggio e in forza delle quali sfrutta le risorse di questa nazione. Questo è un bambino che lavora in una miniera d'oro in Burkina Faso. Il Burkina Faso è una delle nazioni più povere del mondo. Per il Burkina Faso, che ha l'oro, la Francia stampa moneta coloniale. In cambio pretende che finiscano nelle casse del tesoro francese il 50% di tutto quello che il Burkina Faso esporta. L'oro che questo bambino si infila in un cunicolo per tirare fuori finisce per lo più nelle casse dello Stato francese. Allora la soluzione non è prendere gli africani e spostarli in Europa. La soluzione è liberare l'Africa da certi europei che la sfruttano e consentire a queste persone di vivere di quello che hanno.
Yes. Thank you for that short suspense, but you have heard a lot of issues about. I want to talk about the 11 pact that France signed with these African countries. Okay, that's my focus for today. I want to talk about those because those pacts are still there, and most of the African countries are still impacted today because of the pact that they signed with France. Okay, but the issue is, are you ready to come out, or are you ready to stay there? Like countries like Cameroon, countries like Cote d'Ivoire, or Ivory Coast, Senegal, all these countries are still suffering from paying this colonial debt or colonial taxes, as they call it, right? But what is the issue today? We are seeing that there's a problem because African countries have to rise up and stand by themselves. Okay, France's post-colonial activities continue to influence its relationship, no matter how France tried to coin it. Okay, you have seen from the excerpt that I just showed you that the tension that is causing the African countries with the French relationship is because of the colonial pact, and that colonial pact has so many consequences, right? First of those consequences is economic dependence. Most of the African countries, many of these African countries depend on France, right? Many of them that were these former French colonies still maintain economic ties with France, right? Often, most of them rely on French investment and trade. Okay, and this economic dependence is a very big issue because you cannot say you are independent and you become dependent. Okay, these countries that are French speaking cannot have their own currency, cannot have anything that is theirs. Okay, most of that pact is military, economic, currency wise. Okay, their natural resources and all those things, right? Let me go through them, then you understand how this pact is very vital for you to understand why France is tied to this pact with these African countries, that they are still under colonial rule, because this pact is like forever. Okay, it's like you sign your death warrant because you don't have choice. You must pay those pacts, right? Number one, the number one of those 11 pacts says that France, the colonial debt should be paid to France. I don't know what that is, but that's number one in that pact, that this country should pay their colonial debt. All right, the newly independent countries, they are bound to pay this colonial debt. That colonial debt means that they are paying France for colonizing them. You understand what I'm saying? That means that for what France is saying that they should pay them back for what they did in the countries. So I don't understand what France did. Cameroon is there. We have seen Cameroon, right? What did France do for Cameroon before they granted them independence? And most of this country fought but civil war before France granted an independence. Independence was not like that simple, right? You understand that France fought in Cameroon, right? Like even in Ivory Coast or Senegal, they fought before they were granted independence. But you remember that same fight that they were fighting in these countries, these guys were terrorists. Okay, the guys that fought for the independence of all these African countries, they were terrorists, right? That is the number one of those pacts. Number two is the automatic confiscation of national reserve. Any amount of money you make must go through France. France will assess the money and give your own share. Okay, and if you want to take that money, you have to borrow. You have to borrow the money. Okay, and so the African countries should deposit that their national monetary reserve into the French central bank. That's how it works. Okay, so that is how most of this monetary system work. The CFA central bank will also impose a certain amount of a credit to each member country, equivalent to 20% of that country's public revenue. So most of these countries are bound to pay that money because they cannot withdraw money when they have not paid that 20%. Then when they want to borrow, they have to borrow from the French, So more than 80% of the foreign reserve of these African countries are deposited in these French operational accounts, okay, controlled by the French treasury. Okay, so this is how it works, and this is just the second of those 11 pacts that we all know, and it affects the country's economy because they cannot make decisions by themselves. They have to first request from France, right? Number three, the right of first refusal on any raw material. So when any country want to buy any raw material from these countries, they have to consult France. France has to tell them, okay, no, don't sell to this country, but you can sell to this country. Or you can say, no, don't sell to that country. We don't want you to sell to this country. That's how it happens. Okay? If you don't follow that, good and fine. Just know that all these countries have gone through coup d'etats. And these coup d'etats are just to take off all those presidents that were trying to be claiming to be against France. Okay? France will not pity you. They will topple that government and bring a new president at no time. That's how it works, okay? And most of these French African countries, they understand the rule. They know the rule of the game, okay? That's how they will always have the France-Afrique seminar, the France-Afrique conference or meeting or whatever they call it, where all African countries will go to France and give their balance sheet, okay? Number four of that, they say the priority to French interests and companies in public procurement and public bidding. It means that if these countries have any business, any project, okay, railway, bridges, anything they want to do in so far as concerned business or construction, infrastructure development, they must use the French companies. Okay, we have seen that in Cameroon, where we have companies like Bolloré, who is controlling the seaport, right? The Bolloré controls the Douala seaport in Cameroon. It controls other seaport across the world. Okay, then when you come to Total, you see Total is claiming to organize the Nations Cup, but you don't know Total, the money is coming from African countries. Okay, they are giving them back their money that they are paying for taxes. They say, oh, Total Energy is organizing then you have the other one. They say Orange. Orange is another one that they use. Those are French companies, right? They use the monies from these African countries and claim as if they are sponsoring something. And they know that African countries are so die-hearted supporters of football. Okay, they have made most of the people or the African people, they will prefer to watch the French league. Okay, they will prefer to watch the French league, and they will be fighting in their houses. I'm a Marseille supporter. I'm a Paris Saint-Germain supporter. I'm a this supporter. Lille, Monaco. Then their own league in their own African country are not even functional. Okay, they focus on foreign leagues. The football in those countries are not even functional. Okay, that's how they are manipulating these African countries. I don't know when they'll start to build the African strong football nation to really revitalize the football in Africa. I don't see when that will happen, because you saw most Africans players are being sold in European countries and France. If you see the French national team, right? You see the French national team. That's what happens. Most of the players are black from Africa, right? Or their parents are from Africa, where they will prefer to, so they have the post-colonial era. You can see it even in football, where you see the French national team is all black, and so you see the impact of that really post-colonial era, right? That's number 5 of that pact is an exclusive right to supply military equipment and train the country military officers. So most of these African countries have they will have this kind of a program to go and train their military in France. Okay, the training in France just lets you to know what will happen, right? Those are their students, their future presidents, the future leaders who will topple the government that is not trying to pay their dues. Okay, if you don't want to pay your tax, your colonial taxes, they will kick you out. So you just have to comply with the colonial taxes and pay your dues so that you stay in power. Okay, that's how it works. Number 6, they say the right for France to pre-deploy troops and intervene military in the country to defend its interests. It means that France has the right to come and intervene in your country militarily. Okay, if you have any problem, or sometimes that's why there are French troops that have been stationed in most of these countries. That's why you saw Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso say they want to send out all the French troops, right? Yeah, so that's how it is. Those troops are there for a reason. They are defending that regime, but they are also protecting their interests. Okay, if that regime wants to go against them, they know how to do. They know what to do to kick them out. They have their best student that graduated from Sorbonne in Paris, Paul Biya. Okay, Paul Biya is their best student. That's why he has been there for 41 years, because he can keep the power. He can protect their interests. Okay, Paul Biya don't care about the people in Cameroon. They don't care about that. What they care is to keep the France interest so that they can stay in power, because they know that France will always protect them militarily. That's a pact, number 6 of that pact. Okay, the next of the pact is the issue of obligation to make French the official language. So this is very important. There are countries that want to make English or other language too, but France will not allow that. Okay, English will be the language. That's why you saw the people in southern Cameroon, Ambazonia, where the government of the majority government of French Cameroon wanted to assimilate the minority southern Cameroonian, in the federal system that they form. But what happened? It was very difficult for Paul Biya to manipulate, okay, the English-speaking people, because they said no. We want our identity. We want to maintain our English Anglo-Saxon system. We want to maintain everything that we understand. Our legal system. The courts should be only strictly English. Okay, and that's what happened. So Paul Biya could not succeed. But that is one of the causes of the civil war, of the war going on in Ambazonia today, where Paul Biya is very adamant to go to negotiation table, right? Because they know France will always come to them and they speak their French, right? Number 8 is the obligation to use the colonial money. This one everybody knows, right? All these countries, 14 of them, still use, because they still use the CFA, right? But we can't take out Niger, Cote d'Ivoire, or Mali for now, because they are still using the CFA. They have not succeeded to have their own French or their own currency yet, so they are still using the French currency. So hopefully they can because you remember the ECO, France fought so hard to stop the ECO, where all the West African country wanted to form the ECO. France fought so hard, caused some countries to go into loggerheads, and that's how France is good at divide and rule. It's a policy that most African leaders are using today. They'll take this leader and take this leader and pit them together, and they start hitting their head, and they rule. Okay, that's how. So they'll divide the opposition, divide them. Okay, then let them go. They can never win because they are divided, right? That's how France is doing, and they have teach this their style in all these African countries that president can stay as long as they want. France will protect them. Okay, in power. That's how France works. Okay. Number 9 of that pact is the obligation to send France the annual balance sheet and your reserve report. I'm going to say that is anything you do, any business you do in your country, you have to send France the report. France will have to go through it, try to check it, and see how it works. Okay, that's how you have to send your balance sheet. Okay. Yep. The 10 is a renunciation to enter into any military alliance in any other country or else authorized by France. It means that all these countries cannot go into any military alliance with any other country. Okay, unless France give them the accord or they give them the go ahead. Okay, so they are spellbound under this accord to stay with France. Okay, you see Pan-Africanists and all these serious political leaders trying to criticize France about why France is doing this to African countries, right? You saw Ambassador Harikana. This is what most countries don't like in France, right? It's causing a lot of problem. Okay, that's the problem. The 11th of that pact is the obligation to ally with France in situation of war or global crisis. It means that, don't forget, more than how many million of Africans fought with France, right? Yes, during time when France was faced with war. Okay, and that's why they say that they will still want these African countries to still be with them. Okay, yeah. So most of this pact has a lot of things that when you see you can tell that France still has influence over these countries, right? And the reason is that the pact has a lot of impact. I mentioned the economic side, right? The economic dependence. They are independent, but they are not economically dependent. They are not economically independent. They are dependent still on France. Okay. What makes it difficult is that despite this gaining of independence, some of them, these African countries, still feel that France exerts this influence, okay, over their political and economic affairs. Okay, this perception of these neo-colonial tendencies is what is really straining some of the diplomatic relationship. Okay, and don't be surprised why you had Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso send France out of their country, right? Their military. Okay, and France has a history of this military intervention in Africa that right? Where if a country and they'll intervene, say they want to help the jihadists, they want to fight against terrorism. That's how they come. They often citing that reason, such as combating that terrorism or restoring stability. Then they come to your country, and once they are there, they want to decide which leader to put now. Okay, but these interventions can be perceived as really meddling into the internal affairs, right? That's what happened in most of these countries. Most of these countries believe that France's intervention is like meddling in their affairs, right? And using that as a pretext to come and exploit their resources, their natural resources. Okay, all these former French colonies still have to, at the detriment of the population. France don't even think about the local population who don't even have the daily bread. they will come and be squeezing the little money, the little resources. They will squeeze everything from these countries. They are suffering. But most of these African countries still understand that they need to start doing things for themselves. Okay, the other countries, all over the world, did not care about French, dominance. Right? They are doing their things. There are a lot of other countries that are doing that. Remember, there are still things that even Britain or United Kingdom still impose on its former French colonies, right? Yes, because even though Britain is not using the direct rule system, they're using the indirect rule, but they still have what they call the Commonwealth countries. The Commonwealth is headed by the Queen of England, right? Yeah. So, but the way France is doing it is just that this pact that you sign is just like you're signing your own death warrant, where you have to make sure that you fulfill all these promises every day, every year. You have to pay that. If you don't pay, they always send you a warning letter, like an eviction letter to the it's like your landlord telling you that, hey, if you don't pay your house rent, you'll be evicted from that house. That's how France is dealing with these African countries, right? Yes. Most of the time you see all those things, and there's too much burden on these countries. Their debt is so much. The immigration policies. Most of these countries believe that France is so nice, so rich. Oh, moi je pas au Paris, je pas à Paris, je pas à Paris. Very proud. That's how when they're going to Paris, that's their best trip. They don't know that it's their money that is building France. Because if this country stop paying this pact, how will France live? Because France has been used to this kind of way that they will collect these people's money and they put in their banks, and they'll be investing that money and make France rich. These countries are there. Poverty is stricken, unemployment, all kinds of lack of basic infrastructure. They will be suffering, and they don't know that they can say, okay, this time, no, please, this is what we want. Yes, because France, then the leaders do not have choice, because they know that France will support them, right? France support all this authoritarian regime, because that any regime that is paying their fair share of that debt, the colonial debt, is respecting all these 11 pact, France is okay with them. You cannot imagine that in Cameroon, the government of Cameroon has been there for 41 years. France cannot say anything. Then they talk of good governance, democracy. How do you talk of democracy? But you want democracy in Europe, you want democracy in America, but you don't want democracy in Africa. Those leaders are dictators. They practice dictatorship. You dare, you back them. That is the problem most of these countries are facing today. That their people are suffering. There is lack of accountability. The people cannot say anything. How do you support dictatorship? And very soon, you are the same people who come and read them. They say this country is undemocratic. This country is not accounted. They say for this audit, or this country is a highly indebted country. Whereas you people know why they are indebted. You know why there is no accountability. Most of these ministers have their accounts abroad, in these French banks, they are Swiss banks, all these banks in abroad, and you don't hold them accountable. Okay, the countries that are having these presidents is just because of the support that France has, right? Because most of them are very debt burdened. When you say debt burden, it means that you have so much debt that you cannot pay, so you rely now on the foreign countries to help you to even borrow some money. You go and borrow to IMF, go and borrow this money, borrow. At the end of the day, you cannot pay back. What do you have to do? You have to still beg for crumbs. I watched a video today. I saw these guys. This this is something that you have to look at, right? The countries that are suffering are the ones that are being impacted. The local population, the buy and sell them, the local women who are there are the ones who are bearing the brunt. That is a lesson for us to learn. But let's understand how it works, okay? Yes, because if the African countries need to stand up, they should start thinking about a lot of things, okay?
Every single time an African leader had made a speech about making their country an independent nation, they either got assassinated or mysteriously went missing. Take the case of Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba, who made a speech in 1960 declaring the end of Belgian rule. He was assassinated shortly after. So back to present day. West Africans are sick and tired of France. Some protesters even holding signs that France is a terrorist state. Mali and Burkina Faso were the first African countries to completely cut ties with France early August, late July. They turned off France radio stations.
Wow, she's so intelligent, and thank you for watching. Please, if you like the my videos, please make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you can watch my videos all the time, okay? Make sure you subscribe so that anytime I come up, you see me, okay? This is your humble host, Fritz Misodi. Thank you for watching, and God bless you. Stay blessed, and make sure you subscribe to the channel, okay?